Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Joe from Startuprad.io, your startup podcast and YouTube blog from Germany. I'm right now here again on a Saturday in my cramped study, and I do have another interview guest here with me. Before we get into the interview, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell button as well. We now have a Patreon account, so you can find everything down here. So first, Karim, I would like to welcome you to my podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
Completely my pleasure. And as all our frequent viewers and listeners can tell, you are in some relation with a startup. The viewers can already see you're a CEO and co-founder of a startup called Hawa Dawa. We get into the right pronunciation, don't worry. And but first, let's talk a little bit about you and what you did before you came to this startup, which is based in Munich. Tell us a little bit about you.
So I was born in Cairo to a sort of a mixed family, German-Egyptian family, where I also went to school, to a German school, but I also had the Egyptian degree. And after finalizing my school, I was to Germany, where I studied on energy economics and right away then started working in the development cooperation field. So basically doing development finance projects in Southeast Asia, in the Middle East, focusing on climate change mitigation, and also sort of how to finance and provide financial means to people who do these types of projects. And from there, I decided, the learning curve is flattening out. So I want to go back and find a new path. So I went back to university at TU Munich here in Munich. It's basically where the first steps of Hawa Dawa began. What also influenced me a lot was, of course, I was during the Arab Spring in Egypt, which I had the feeling that this had a lot more impact than all the development finance I've been doing or I could do. So this kind of forced me to say, let's try an entrepreneurial path, and this brought me to the TU Munich.
That is pretty nice. Sorry for all the interruptions we have here, but we're still recording in times of Corona, and there's a lot of traffic on the internet. Really sorry about this. There's nothing we can do about it. You've been there in the Arab Spring. Can you tell us a little bit about the Arab Spring? Because we have audiences from all across the world, and also in North America, Asia. They may not be very well aware of what was going on there.
Well, basically, it was the uprising that happened in January, mainly like between December and February in 2011, that led to the ousting of the president of Egypt at the time, and was mostly led by a young group of people. And in that time, like a lot of energy, like I think a lot of businesses got formed also in the aftermath, a lot of sort of entrepreneurial striving, trying to find entrepreneurial solution to some of the inefficiencies of old economic systems. So the energy was quite high at the moment. And I remember, sitting together with a lot of people in one room thinking like, how can we move forward? And this energized me. And I felt like, okay, so development assistance is one way, but how being sort of building your own thing has a greater impact. And this was basically what led me to the path I have chose.
I see. We may add that working in development is usually technical assistance or business assistance, just to help people get businesses or sustainable development off the ground. What is the area you've been working in?
In that particular sphere, so we were working at a partnership office between the United Nations Environment Program and the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. And basically it was about training microfinance institutions and banks on how to provide finance for renewable energy and energy efficiency applications. So this was more my sphere. So basically, how can, from very small households, biogas generators, to solar home systems, upwards to wind parks and bigger solar parks, how can banks develop products that help people kind of finance and build these type of projects from the ground up?
I see. And when I'm stalking you on LinkedIn, it shows me that you went from this position, straight into your startup. So what was kind of the trigger that triggered the decision? Okay, now I want to fend for my own. And then we can get into what you guys are actually doing, right?
So after, I think, working in 2.5 years, 3 years in this field, I felt that my sort of the learning curve is flattening out. It's a bit of repetitive, and also there are a lot of good projects going out there, but also some projects that kind of disillusioned a bit the idea of development cooperation. You really need the local ownership. You really need entrepreneurship in order to manifest sort of the positive impact. And so this drove me to look at what else is out there. So I started screening for master's thesis. I had a bachelor back then, and I found the TU Munich, which is as it refers to itself, an entrepreneurial course on entrepreneurship. And I thought, okay, so we have a mixture between technical stuff, hands-on studies. Electrical engineering was my focus, and combined with entrepreneurship. So this led me to university. So it wasn't just right away a jump from my job to the startup, but it was in between. I had started my studies, and within the studies, we left the apartment, everything in Frankfurt, moved to Munich, started new, and from there, within the studies, a seminar led me to the idea of how, with a group of students back then, within a seminar of the TU Munich, and since then things have taken their path.
We may tell everybody who's not from Germany, TU Munich refers to Technical University. It's one of the premier institutions of higher learning in Germany, and they are, of course, very much focused on technical subjects like engineering, physics, chemistry, computer science, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And they do have also a great encouragement and great system to set up for startups and founders. We've seen a few very interesting startups coming out from there. So now you've doing your master thesis. You are in Munich. How did you start a startup?
I went to a master's degree that was a mixture of electrical engineering and business, and I had only a background in business. So doing a master's in engineering wasn't that permissible back then, but I had very good math grades. And then I talked to the professors who interviewed me and said, okay, I need to do some degrees from the bachelor's, and sort of in order to get the full degree. So we moved. So me and my family, my wife Yvonne and our daughter, basically, were living then in Munich. And within the sphere of a seminar of this course that I had chosen, called Think Mac Start, which is sort of co-organized by the Technical University of Munich and Unternehmertum, which is sort of the entrepreneurial factory, basically, in Munich. It was a hackathon, 2 weeks. You get an idea. You have to develop an idea and build a prototype in 2 weeks with a competition in it. So then already sort of I was sitting next to an Indian colleague, Nikhil, who talked about air pollution, similar countries, and from there, kind of Hawa Dawa started its first steps in the 2 weeks. And we did a prototype of a wearable device for asthmatics to be carried around in order to help people, at-risk groups, to know when air pollution is bad and good. Sort of a very, very basic laser cut device. Wasn't very professionally made, but the idea and the concept led us to win the competition there. Everything took its course, basically.
So people with asthma, they do have a respiratory condition, and basically should avoid as much as possible all polluted air because it can trigger acute asthma, which makes it very, very hard to breathe for them. That's it. Basically, you went from a wearable device for people with asthma into monitoring air quality.
So the idea back then was you get a device and for direct consumers, people wear it as a wearable device, and you crowdsource the data and create a map for everybody else to see, so people can see who else is wearing the device out there. And because it's very basic disease management, it's always to say avoid the triggers of both indoors of asthma symptoms. And we went there. Then I went together with my wife, and also then became a co-founder, Yvonne. We went to Cairo, did an interview in the largest clinic for respiratory diseases in Egypt. We also did a study in Germany to find out how was the readiness, and the results were that most of the people are ready or are interested in this type of data, but not a wearable per se. So if you can provide the information in a higher density, but not as a wearable, it's more favorable because you don't have to carry something around with you. Plus, it's hard to manage how the people are using the devices. Also, the quality of data sensors back then weren't in the size. You can miniaturize the devices indefinitely and still have accurate data. A lot of the things kind of showing into perspective that let's try a broader approach and say, we provide the data through our own means, so providing our own miniature measuring stations, which are bigger than a wearable, satellites and everything else that is coming. So at the end, we built up an entire technology platform. And because now you are not tied to selling to direct customers, you can provide the data for everybody who's interested. So this basically made us an environmental intelligence provider for all types of different industries. And we focus on how hardware is still a smaller component, but also focusing a lot on analytics and the sort of the use cases that come out of it. And this also is explained through the interdisciplinarity in the team. I mean, we have epidemiologists, we have traffic engineers, traffic simulation experts, geoinformatics, ecoclimatology, like all these types of different disciplines in a very small team. So we can take air quality data and bring it to actual insights on different types of levels in everyday life. So this is sort of, before taking too much away, but this is sort of the basic journey that we took.
I see. Before we get into what type of institutions may be interested in your data, can we first get into how did your company end up with the name Hawa Dawa?
So it started in the very first days where I was talking to Nikhil back then, our also student Munich, who was with me in the team. That we've noticed that we were looking for a name. So there were two names that we're thinking about, and Hawa Dawa was the second one because we noticed that Hawa basically means air, and Dawa means medicine in more than 7 languages. So it was the same thing in his languages, which is Hindi, Urdu, Pashto, like a lot of Asian languages, and in Arabic. But we also found out it's the same in Persian, in Swahili, in Malaysian, Indonesian. So we found out that I think more than 1 billion people will understand what Hawa Dawa means, even if you don't speak the language. And because air pollution is one of the biggest problems, like it's a massive challenge for every single country worldwide. We found it quite attractive to find them that rhymes, sounds peculiar, and also addresses the issue that we're talking about, that air and medicine or air and health cannot be seen as two separate things, but need to be interwoven into one sort of technological concept to help us solve it.
Been living in Beijing, I can totally say that air quality and health go together hand in hand. That said, I'm not always taking everything so seriously. Your company name also has the benefit all your employees can remember it if they're totally drunk at Christmas celebration. Hawa Dawa works perfectly. That said, what kind of clients are you currently looking for? What type of institution is interested in your data?
So we have an entire value chain that you need to look at. On the one side is data creation. So data creation means you have a lot of cities that only have maybe sort of a handful of data points or no data points at all, or the accessibility to these data points is not given. So you need to create your own database. So on the one side, we create this data for and place them on data markets, for example, through our own sentience device, our own IoT sensor networks. Add to that the combination of sensor networks with atmospheric models as well as satellites, the new satellites that are monitoring air quality now that are between 2, 3, and even 1 year old, and still new ones will be launching. So we this database, and basically anybody who's interested in this type of data, additional layer is being addressed from municipalities and cities that still rely on a very old type of technology that we kind of extend through the use of our data, our technology, but also we talk about weather companies. We're talking about providers of more data marketplaces, smart city platforms, IT platforms. But the main so this is basically to open up the market and let people work with air quality data as a commodity. What Hawa Dawa focuses on is that we do not just simply say this is the air quality data or this is the concentration that you're monitoring. But we're taking this data and saying, how does this relate to traffic, to weather, to health, to real estate, to your own kind of city planning, to shipping and logistics on a global scale through satellites. So basically, it's about building the bridge from air quality to all these type of disciplines using intelligent business models, but also intelligent software algorithms and programs to kind of help you decipher this data into clear insights that you can just use right away for your business or for your city and municipality with one click. Because a lot of questions we have is like, and also this is why we moved away from the individual B2C case, because if you're an asthmatic and walking in a high pollution area, what can you do? It's not like you get a red alarm and then you kind of have all the tools. Your capability to counteract is limited. But with the power of companies, with the power of government, with the power of a lot of people who can influence urban processes, you have a bigger and broader audience that you could reach. So basically, yes, it's about number one, data creation and placing it to the people who just need the data to inform, but also insights and analytics and intelligence based on this data that you apply directly to other softwares, platforms, and also decision-making tools, so that you don't just inform, but actually steer and control the city or your processes based on the air quality information that you get.
When you've been talking, I had two questions in mind. One of them was, what's your geographical coverage? Can you provide like air quality data from all over the world, or is it focused on like Germany or Europe? And secondly, what type of sensors are you using? Are you also like a hardware manufacturer, or you are actually buying them? Or is it like a size of a soccer ball that cities have to play somewhere in order to measure the air quality?
The attractiveness in our approach is the scalability of it. So basically today, and since like 1.5, 2 years, Hawa Dawa can provide you the emissions data, basically of most air pollutants on a global scale, from monitoring every factory to every airport to every city to every shipping route. All this type of technology is already there, albeit of course it's in a low resolution. So spatially it's a low resolution, but this is sort of the Hawa Dawa technology is basically from very broad, creating hundreds of millions of data points per year on a globe to increase their time to temporal and spatial resolution up to like 100 times 100 meters on a city scale. So the entire coverage from global, which is something we do today, upwards to individual cities is possible with our platform. So basically it's we can cover all the use cases that need real-time data, historic data, predicted data, but also global data are able to be covered through our platform. And the second question, sorry, what was the second question?
What type of sensors are you using? You're producing them yourself? You're relying on like factories, authorities providing like open data?
So we, as I mentioned earlier, we started from a hardware journey. We wanted to create a good accurate device that allows us to deploy it in networks. So we experimented very long with different types of sensors that are now entering the market, new types of generation of sensors that are miniaturized, but can provide some reliable base. So we tested all types of depth sensors and then came out with a combination that works well together. Also compared it with other measurement devices in the market, and found out that we can achieve a higher accuracy, or a very good accuracy compared also to official measuring stations, by combining these sensors, designing our own cover case, the firmware, the PCB, the way we decipher the way we take this data from the firmware and calibrate it. So using machine learning to calibrate the data, this is sort of everything that we do in-house. So we install the devices in our own office facilities, basically, and we deploy them ourselves whenever a city wants more real-time, dense kind of measurement points.
So if I understand it correctly, you basically rely on available data, make it available on your data platform. But if a city, municipality, something like this, wants more precise data, you can actually put your sensors with your own firmware in there, right?
Yeah. For the first aspect, what also makes sense is not just taking existing data, but merging existing data in specific ways can help you generate a lot better insights. Like with just existing data, we can already tell you what our project in Northern Ireland, sort of the exposure of respiratory groups according to the area code. We can tell you if the sources of air pollution are local or if the wind is bringing the air pollution. So just with existing data, with the Hawa Dawa platform, it's just a matter of input data. We can provide you with a lot more in-depth analytics. And it wants even further, sort of controlling the infrastructure with traffic, ecosystem traffic management, providing more dense data, then we deploy our sensors or use the existing infrastructure that the city has.
I would assume, since you're located right now in Germany, your main group of clients is within Germany, Europe, as well as international institutions?
Yeah. So we are in Germany, have a very good coverage. I think let's figure out onboarded about 26 cities on our platform. We also have Switzerland, as well as Ireland, UK, but also start other European countries, and we have cooperations going on already today in Latin America and the Middle East and Northern Africa. So we're already extending sort of the network to kind of Hawa Dawa, as the name says, has a global kind of approach to it, and we kind of honor this approach by looking over the borders.
Mm-hmm. I see. Really sorry. While you were speaking, I had to constantly resize your video. Unfortunately, our influence on the internet itself is quite limited, and if there's a lot of traffic, there is nothing we can do about it. That said, let's get close to the end of our interview. What you guys are looking for? Usually, startups are always looking for funding.
Well, I mean, we are in the final stages of closing a funding round. So maybe for the following one, which would be looking more on the internationalization in 2021. So we're happy to get in contact with anybody interested in what we're doing, but also very much interested in people who kind of are willing to be creative and take a step forward and kind of say, I believe that air quality data, which I share our vision, which is basically air quality data should play a role in everyday decision-making process. And whoever thinks that for his business or for his city or for his realm of influence, there is a possibility to integrate air quality information, whether it's a new product, new service, but also kind of just existing products and services. Our door is always open for cooperations, or even if regionally saying, well, I wanted to have this in my economy as well, just write us. Other than that, we were always looking to expand and create sort of a movement behind this whole topic, because we believe that you can build a business and still be profitable and still kind of at the same time sustainable. And I think this is the way to go if you look at what's happening right now during the corona epidemic, that shows that you need to take the environment. And so anybody who shares this vision, of course, is welcome to join our network.
Well, awesome last words. Only thing left for me to say is thank you very much. Everybody who'd like to learn more, go down here in the show notes. There is a link not only to a Hawa Dawa website, but also to your personal LinkedIn profile so people can reach out to you directly. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Jan, and stay safe.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.